Monster Hunter is a series of games that demand a high level of dedication from its players. New hunters are expected to learn how to manage their resources, figure out how to choose and optimize their armor skills, and eventually master an intricate combat system across 14 different weapons against dozens of unique monster encounters. Overwhelmed by this expectation, it is not uncommon for new players to eventually hit a wall, or the point in which all of their struggle with the learning process coalesce against a particularly difficult fight, creating a moment where they simply decide Monster Hunter is not for them. Back when Monster Hunter World first came out on PlayStation 4, I personally hit my wall with this guy, high rank Odogaron, and it wasn't until a year or so later with the announcement of Iceborne that I decided to watch some video guides and give the game another try. Watching weapon tutorials got me through the general gameplay for sure, but what truly helped capture me as a Monster Hunter fan was to change my combat mindset from a purely reaction-based approach to actively trying to understand how each monster worked. Hi, I'm Gooman, and this is how I learned to love Monster Hunter. So we'll be looking at 3 separate fights today, starting with the low-rank Kulu-Ya-Ku. He's one of the first monsters you'll come across in Monster Hunter World. His attacks are simple, very clearly telegraphed, and I always enjoy coming back to him as a sparring partner whenever I'm practicing a new weapon. And in my opinion, he has a surprising amount he can teach us about combat in this video game. For this fight I'm using the lance, mostly because it is not a very popular weapon in the community, and I just wanted to show it some love. I think it's really good. The shield allows you to stay close to the monster and play very aggressively without being punished too bad. I would recommend the lance to just about anybody. Give it a try, it's great. As you can see, I just have one of the lowest level lances equipped and no armor. We are not messing with skills right now. Something you can notice right away is that he tends to attack in a straight line directly in front of him, like with that jump attack, this forward sweep motion. Once he picks up this rock out of the ground, he'll use it to hammer you right in front of him. And that 3-hit picking attack obviously hits right in front of him. So now you should be thinking that, for the most part, when he attacks, all you have to do is really walk to the sides, and you'll avoid his attack. Another thing worth considering to me is how the Kulu-Ya-Ku changes the pace of combat by picking up its little rock. If you consider with the lance, the shield allows you to stay up and close and aggressive because you can just block its attacks. This guy's also thinking the same thing. He has this rock that's limiting your ability to attack from the front, so he's actually attacking a lot more frequently, forcing you off into the sides. And this is interesting because a lot of monsters actually behave in a really similar way. Some monsters like to cover themselves in fire, so it's more dangerous to get close. Some like to cover themselves in ice, so they have higher armor. And the bird likes to grab rock. I skipped ahead a bit in the hunt here to where I caught our boy eating a delicious egg. It's one of those detail things the designers put in the game that add so much charm to these monsters that I just can't help but adore it. I think it's great. The last lesson I want to pull from this fight is that as a fight continues, the monster will start getting tired, and it's going to need to spend a bit of time after their stronger attacks to recover and keep the fight going, which will give you a nice big opening to capitalize on. Look at that, got its head stuck into dirt. Another one of those details that I really enjoy about this game, and I don't think I would have noticed them as easily if I didn't put in the effort to actually break these fights down for myself and really pay attention to what's going on. I'll stop tormenting this guy for now so we can move on to the next fight. The second fight we're going to be looking at today is with the low-rank Rathian. I'm using a greatsword here along with some easily accessible armors with skills like poison resistance and fire resistance that could be relevant to what we're going to be facing. So the first thing we'll see here is the roar. That's the monster telling you it sees you and it's going to fight you, so you better be ready. Ouch. Monsters will continue to roar throughout a fight, sometimes for no reason at all, but for other times it's to signify that they just entered a state of enrage, which you can tell on the minimap by the little circular icon turning red. Enraged monsters will hit harder and faster, so make sure you got some healing items handy. One thing worth noting about roars is that they're like attacks if they did 0 damage, so if you had a way to block or otherwise evade an attack, you will be able to use them against roars. Examples including blocking with your greatsword, and in this clip I actually managed to dodge roll through a roar. The timing to pull this off can be tricky and different for each monster, but it's easy enough to practice and it's definitely fun to pull off in the middle of a fight. You also have access to a skill called earplugs, which will reduce the effects of roars if you prefer to have something you can just set to your armor and forget. Another thing Rathian can teach us about monsters is how flight can change the pacing of a hunt. So much like how certain other monsters like to grab a rock, winged monsters like the Rathian will take to the sky to not only avoid you, but also to use some of their strongest attacks as well. Like this flying somersault tail slam of death that'll also poison you. The last thing I wanted to mention on the Rathian fight is by concentrating your attacks to individual body parts, you can actually break them to create advantages for yourself. Like in this case, by attacking the tail, you can chop off the tip of it, which not only reduces the range of her tail sweep attacks, it also removes her ability to poison you, because ecologically, that's where Rathian keeps all her poison. And with that, let's move on to the last one. Alright, so for the last fight, we are in the Rotten Vale. We are here to face off against my old nemesis, the high-rank Odogaron. The Rotten Vale might be stressful to newer players because in the lower sections, there's an environmental effect called effluvium that constantly drains your health. And add that onto fighting probably the strongest monsters you come up to at this point. That might be a little frustrating. It's not conducive to too much fun. But in regards to that, let me show you my armor set here real quick. I'm using the charge blade for this fight, no particular reason. And then all the armor pieces are ones that you can get very easily from monsters up to this point. But the main one to look at is the Hornitar mail. It's just one piece of armor, and you can get it by taking down a few of those beetle-looking things in the upper levels of the Rotten Vale. And in doing so, you can get this piece that comes with a skill called the Fluvial Expert, which makes you immune to the environmental effects of this map. So there you go. If you're having trouble in Rotten Vale, just grab either that piece of armor or a skill, a decoration, they're called. Something you can slot into another piece of armor that'll give you that bonus and make it easier for yourself. Alright, and here's a big red dog. Beautifully missing that dodge roll into the roar. That's alright. So to explain how this guy works, he's a lot like the Kulu-Ya-Ku in that he tends to attack in a straight line in front of him, which means the same rules apply, right? You can avoid most of his attacks by just picking a direction and running. I like to go left just because my thumb is more comfortable that way. Well, we'll see if we can bait him into doing some other attacks here. Alright, yeah, this is his big combo where he can lunge and lunge forward several times in a row. Again, all you have to do is walk to the side. That's it. That's all you got to do. Yeah, like that follow-up. Later on, he'll do that 2 or 3 times in a row. Same rule applies. The reason why I decided to focus so much on the combat in this game when talking about hitting a wall and getting over it is you have to want to get through a wall when you hit it. Otherwise, because it's so much easier to just say, I don't like this game, and then quit, which is fine. Some games just aren't for you. But for me, it was putting in this much effort into really getting to know these monsters and how their moveset works, maybe their behavior outside of combat. I just watched this Odogaron completely ignore me earlier and drag this corpse into his nest. Like in the middle of combat, he just stopped attacking me and just went away. Little things like that. It's so charming. I learned to love those little moments I have because this experience is so personal to me at this point. And that helped keep me in the game for hundreds and hundreds of hours. And again, if you're not willing to do that for one video game, then you're fine. Some games just aren't for everyone. I was able to get the paralysis on him. Great time to do a little counterattack. All those attacks hit directly in front of him. Maybe I'll go for the tail here, because his tail swipes hit in a really wide arc, and I don't like that. That forces me to have to move farther just to avoid his tail swipe. That move. Whenever he side hops like that, it's usually followed by a lunge, kind of forcing you to move your camera. But if you can see it coming, all you gotta do is move to the side, as always. And there goes the tail. Sometimes the Odogaron will knock himself over, but that's a bait. It has a very specific animation to it, so you will learn to recognize it. But the idea is that he slides backwards, and then kind of from that position he'll lunge at you when you're trying to capitalize on what you thought was a knockdown. So that was a very lucky pixel perfect dodge animation. I don't think I explained it very well earlier, but unlike games like Dark Souls, where the dodge is always usable for its invincibility frames, the iframes, the dodge roll in Monster Hunter, it's more of a positioning tool, right? So you can get from point A to point B much quicker than if you're just running or walking. There is an invincibility frame or two associated, but it's literally the first couple of frames where you jump off from the ground. Like the very beginning of that is where you're invincible. Now there are a couple of armor skills associated with the dodge roll. One of them is the Evade Extender, which increases the distance at which you travel whenever you hit your dodge button. Right? So you have your dodge roll as normal. Some weapons like, not that, some weapons like the lance, gun lance, the charge blade have certain conditions where instead of a dodge roll, you actually do a side hop, something like that. So that distance is also increased. The other skill is Evade Window, which increases the duration of your invincibility frames, I believe, by quite a substantial margin. So if you're the kind of player that likes the Souls-like games and want to be able to just dodge into attacks, Evade Window is the skill you're looking for. I don't personally like playing that way. I just prefer kind of doing this, avoiding attacks just with positioning. I think that just makes it more fun. So hopefully I was able to adequately demonstrate why I view the combat in this game the way that I do. Just by putting so much effort into it, you make it a personal thing, right? It's a relationship you're building with each of these monsters in their own different way. And I think even the easiest monsters have something to teach us about how the game works and what you like about it. If you're struggling to kind of feel invested in the world of Monster Hunter, I would recommend start with combat. Take it a little bit slow. You don't have to finish every fight in under 5 minutes or whatever. Just take your time, learn what these monsters do, and how you want to best approach those situations that they give you. And I promise it, by making it personal, the overall experience becomes much more enjoyable. And with that, my old arch nemesis is defeated. Thank you all for watching.